All right, guys, welcome. My name is Joe Hwang. Quick introduction. I originally am from Madison, Alabama, and a few notable achievements. Made a cameo appearance in a Taylor Swift documentary. I've got one baby delivery under my belt, 5 placentas. Hold a few world records, including a 585-pound deadlift. I love temporary tattoos. This picture here is demonstrating one of those. These are like $2 on Amazon, so pretty fun. But a few things before we get started. We'll wrap this session up with a raffle for a free 1 year premium Picmonic subscription. So you need to be registered and present to win. We're going to also follow that up with a 10-minute Q&A session. So throughout the presentation, drop your questions in the chat. We'll get to as many of them as we can. And additionally, there's going to be a discount code for Pygmonic that we'll give out to all participants. There'll be a link and also sent to your email. So this webinar is being recorded and will post on YouTube and the Pygmonic blog after 1 or 2 days. So here we go. A little bit about my time during PA school in didactic year. I primarily used 2 resources out of my program's PowerPoints, and those were Anki flashcards and Picmonic. So these tools exponentially boosted my efficiency in studying so that I could give both 100% to PA school and have times to pursue other things that were important to me. So one of those things was powerlifting. I was able to train for and set 4 world records while in PA school during my clinical year. So here is a video on the top left. This is a 585-pound deadlift. And quick note, that is not a onesie, that is a lifting singlet. So to get that out of the way, I was able to leverage powerlifting and to get in as an ambassador with a few different companies, including Quest and 6R. And they hooked me up with a bunch of free supplements. You can see that picture on the bottom right. They also donated several $1,000s worth of pre-workout for some of the local community events that our outreach events that we're doing. But thanks to Pygmonic, I was able to do these things. I was able to perform incredibly well academically. Had the honor of being chosen to represent my school at 2 of our state challenge bowl competitions, finishing first place in both of them, as well as representing my program in the AAPA National Challenge Bowl and 2 national ultrasound competitions. So a lot of fun there. I was also on the prospective student interview panel, prospective faculty interview panel, helped out with over a dozen interviews during PA school, had multiple opportunities to serve as a College of Health Professions ambassador for the public health and PA programs, got to speak to hundreds of high school and college students about the medical profession, which was pretty awesome. So this didn't get in the way of school one bit. Again, thanks to Picmonic and Anki and just being efficient with studying. And I got to finish didactic year with a 4.0 GPA. So because Pygmonic helped me build such a strong foundation during didactic year, when I started clinical year and got out in rotations, it really took the stress off of preparing for those end of rotation exams. So that allowed me to maximize my time learning at the clinic, and also got to do some author work for Rosh review and writing board questions, which really helped me prepare for PANCE. And finally, I was able to continue to serve at my local church, something that's important to me, helping with the children's ministry and continuing to be involved with my local small group. So today, we're going to talk about 3 must-dos for thriving while in PA school, or any school for that matter. And the first must-do is to maximize memory. So most of us have pretty decent study skills that helped us to succeed in undergrad, but really the main difference between PA school and undergrad is that there's at least triple the amount of information coming in at one time. So early on, I looked for an audiovisual platform that would help me to learn things more quickly and retain information for longer periods of time. Enter Picmonic. So Picmonic works because it uses evidence-based strategies, which have been tested and published through IRB processes. And one of these is known as the von Restorff effect. If you think about a picture or a story is so much more memorable than just text, which is why we can recall movie scenes and lines for years after we've watched that movie. So second, we remember weird things, and that's what the von Restorff effect states, is that we remember things that stand out. So if you have a list of viruses and there's a rhino virus with the head of a rhino on the body of a virus, you're much more likely to remember that. And Pygmonic takes a lot of these memorable characters and they interact with each other within a story, which is an incredibly powerful way to take all those medical facts and store them into long term memory. So, for example, here on the left, we have a flower queen representing a class of medications known as fluoroquinolones. We have two polar bears with two heads representing bipolar disorder, and we have men in tights representing meningitis. So just like movie scenes, which we can remember for a long time, I can still recall Picmonics that I watched more than a year ago when I was studying for boards. Now, during PA school, or maybe during undergrad, if you just review the information every day, you'd probably be pretty close to 100% retention. But with hundreds of PowerPoint slides coming at you, that isn't practical. And in fact, it's not really even necessary. Another incredibly powerful concept for maximizing memory is spaced repetition. So, this concept of spaced repetition makes much more sense than simple repetition and is a huge factor to success in PA school and board prep. You basically study what you don't know more often, and the things that you do know, you don't review as often. So this is what I love about the Anki flashcard system. Picmonics has the algorithm built into their quizzes as well. The more times you get a question or a flashcard correct, the longer the duration before you'll see that card again. And the more times you miss that card, the more often you'll review it. So really cuts down on the amount of time that you need to study things that you already know. So here's just a few more tips for maximizing your memory, and a little bit of how I use Pygmonic during school. One is before lecture, if you have time to skim the PowerPoints, pull up some Pygmonics that have to do with the objectives and just be a little bit familiar with the material. One of the problems I get to lecture at a couple different PA programs. One of the issues that I've had students come up with and talk to me about is just there's so much information they're not sure what's important. The neat thing about these review books or Picmonic is that they really focus on the most high yield information. So I actually pulled up Picmonic during every single lecture during didactic year. Picmonic has the top 5, 10, 15 facts that are most relevant. And it just kind of helps you sort through, okay, what are the main concepts that I need to focus on? After lecture, again, use spaced repetition. If you're using flashcards, the number one mistake I see with these is making your flashcards too complex. Keep your flashcards simple. They should, at a maximum, you shouldn't have more than like 5 words on the answer portion of your flashcard. So keep them simple. These should be really quick. It should not be open-ended questions. Talk through your objectives with your classmates. Taking time to reteach each other is a fantastic way to lock in information that you've learned. And finally, one of the most helpful things that my class did when I was in school was creating a Google Doc question bank. So essentially, create a Google Doc. Each person contributes a few questions, and you have your own practice tests. So finally, to healthfully thrive in PA school, I strongly believe that we need to take care of our bodies with proper nutrition and physical activity. So, a little bit of interaction here for those of you participating. Drop it in the chat. How many calories do you need to burn to lose 1 pound? All right. So I'll give you a few multiple choice answers here. Is it 350 calories, 1,000 calories, 3,500 calories, or 10,000? All right. Got a few answers coming in here. You guys are on it. So that is correct. 3,500 calories to burn to lose 1 pound. and 3,500 excess calories to gain 1 pound. So I did work as a personal trainer before when I was getting my master's in physical activity and health. And many of my clients would list either gaining muscle or losing weight as one of their goals. And essentially, the body is a big math equation. Okay. So if you go in excess of 3,500 calories, you're going to gain a pound. If you're under by 3,500 calories, you're going to lose a pound. The difference here is that there's something called a basal metabolic rate. So if you didn't do anything at all, just laid in your bed all day, the amount of calories that your body burns just being alive is called your basal metabolic rate. So that varies anywhere from, about 1,200 to 1,600 calories, depending on your metabolism, your size, that kind of stuff. And of course, as you walk around, as you exercise, that's going to burn more calories. As you eat, that's going to put more calories into the system. So again, if you estimate your basal metabolic rate, you have an estimate of how much physical activity you're getting a day and how many calories you're eating. That's kind of how you figure out which way the weight is going to go. Moving on to some basic nutrition, you have three primary macronutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So to put it simply, as far as being healthy, get a balance from each of these groups. One basic principle is moderation. Ultimately, you need to find something that's sustainable, right? PA school is a long time. And again, a lot of short-term diets only work for a little while because they're not sustainable. They cut out entire food groups. Um, which is just not practical, and you can't do that long term. Another general rule is to, when you're shopping at the grocery store, shop mostly on the outside aisles. The processed packaged foods tend to be on the inside aisles, while the fresh produce tends to be on the outside. So, one of the most important tools for PA school for me was actually Tupperware. So I like the glass and the Pyrex stuff. It's easier to clean. It doesn't warp. It freezes well. It heats well. It doesn't leak as much as the plastic stuff. So for me in school, I usually took 1 or 2 days to make all my food. Keep in mind, some foods freeze better than others. So make a note of that while you're prepping. Generally, things that have a higher liquid content freeze a little bit better. Overall, keep it simple. Find a carb, a protein, a few vegetables, and go from there. All right. So if you're not familiar with this, keep it simple. 3 or 4 ingredients per meal is just fine. My primary carbohydrates, as far as grains stuff, was rice, quinoa, sweet potato. Fruits is primarily carbs. My main proteins were chicken, ground beef, salmon, turkey, beans, that kind of stuff. And then I just had a few vegetables that were kind of my go-tos: broccoli, cauliflower, spinach. Your fats are probably going to come from dairy products, oils like olive oils, nuts, certain meats like fattier fish like salmon. So just rotate through these. And again, if there's a particular restaurant, or if you're a big fan of frozen meals, look up the ingredients and make it yourself. It'll save you a lot more money, and in most cases will probably be healthier. All right. Um, Exercise is another important thing. Find something that you enjoy. Again, we're talking about sustainability during PA school, so not like a New Year's resolution to run a mile a day when you hate running. Right. So try something new out. If you're not sure, find someone and tag along with them. Um, these pictures here, these things are called Zorb balls. If you've ever used these are fantastic. Play a soccer game with them. Play uh, things outside. It's another way to get physical activity, so you can get pretty creative here. Two of the biggest barriers that I've seen are either an all or nothing mentality or no plan. So you don't have to set aside 1 to 2 hours for it to count as exercise. 10, 15, 30 minutes even, here and there, really adds up a lot. So get out, walk together with your classmates during your lunch break before you eat, or right after your last lecture of the day. And again, it really helps to have a plan. Don't just wing it. Actually set aside time for physical activity. Try to know what you're going to do before you start. Just like you plan times to meet with your study group, or to review for a certain test, to meet with a professor, to hang out with your friends, actually schedule out meal prep too, and exercise blocks into your calendar. Right. So if you already know what you like to do, whether walking, jogging, biking, swimming, playing sports, go for it. Just do an activity for a set amount of time. If you're not quite sure about what to do when you get there, here's a couple of options. I did spend a little bit of time looking into CrossFit's training modality, and what I really liked about them is they had a good balance within an hour session. You could really cut this down into 30 minutes, but you block off time, and so you get a dynamic warm up, something that gets your heart racing, gets you sweating a little bit, and then if you're going to include some of everything, do a little bit of strength first, so something with weights, then move into cardio, whether that's sprinting, jogging, rowing, something along those lines, jumping jacks, burpees, things like that, and then finish with mobility and stretching. And you can make this as short or as long as possible. So if you've only got 30 minutes, take about 5 to 8 minutes for each of these four things. Tabata is another really cool concept if you don't have much time. The basic premise is you do 20 seconds of work and rest for 10 seconds. And this can be a grueling workout in just a short amount of time. So, for example, you pick two exercises. Say you're doing push ups and sit ups. You'll do push ups for 20 seconds, rest for 10 seconds. Do sit ups for 20 seconds, rest for 10 seconds. Then you go back to push ups, sit ups. And again, usually they're done in blocks of 4 minutes. So 8 rounds of that, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. You can really fit a lot into there. And because it's such high intensity, you'll get a lot of burned calories out of that. All right, so that kind of covers it. Overall, we talked about some study tips, some basic meal prep nutrition, and some exercise ideas for PA school. So now we're going to kind of move into our Q&A session. Feel free to post it in the chat. If we don't get to it, I'll cover it on a separate reel on my Instagram, and probably get to all of those over the next few days. And in addition, if you have any further questions, you can always email me, email members of the Picmonic team. Our contact information is shown on the slides right here. So we'll do a raffle in a second. We'll stay on Q&A. All right. Kind of look through some of these questions here. First one is, you mentioned meal prep. How do you fit a variety of recipes into preparation? So personally, I would only pick 2 or 3 recipes a week. Again, I would make enough to at least get 3 or 4 days worth at a time. So I usually meal prepped 2 days a week, and would rotate things from the freezer to fridge if I needed to. But if I only had 3 or 4 days of worth of food, it could all fit into the fridge. So as far as variety of recipes, again, I had my go-to 4 or 5 like rice, quinoa sources, 4 or 5 meat options for me, and 4 or 5 veggie options, and I just mix those together. Sometimes I wouldn't even put the meals in one container. I would just have a large Tupperware full of all of my chicken, and a large Tupperware full of salmon, and then a large Tupperware full of veggies. And then whatever I felt like eating that day, I would fix it in the morning real quick, scoop everything into one Tupperware container. So that's kind of what I did as far as variety goes. Another question is, how affordable is CrossFit during PA school? I had a few classmates that did something similar to CrossFit, whether it was Orange Theory or joining another gym. And it really just depends. Again, CrossFit and these other types of training modalities like CrossFit are going to be a little bit more expensive, perhaps towards $150 per month. So again, it really depends on your budget and what's important to you. So some people I know will spend $300 a month just on food. They're eating out all the time, and so theoretically, yes, they could cook for a little bit cheaper and do something like CrossFit. But again, it's kind of up to the individual, how much you want to do there. And I know some of these places will just have, instead of a month long type of thing, just like a 10 class pass, for example. Um, I personally didn't join anything. The school gym was what I used primarily, and that had everything that I needed to train there. A lot of schools, will also have classes on campus. So we had like Zumba and yoga and high intensity interval training stuff. So um, that was all available for us. What was your morning routine like when you were in school? Um, Generally, I tried to wake up about an hour and a half. I never studied in the mornings. I did all my studying after class got out until like 10 p.m. And then sometimes 11. By that time, I was just done. I think there was like 3 times in PA school where I stayed up past 11 o'clock. So when I got tired, I just went to bed. But for me in the morning, my faith is super important to me. I would try to spend 15, 30 minutes doing a devotional time, get some breakfast in, and then head over to class. So for the most part, during didactic year, our schedule was pretty set. It was 8 a.m. to about 3 p.m. Every now and then we'd have a lab in there. So if our school needed to switch, we'd start later or start earlier, depending on which group we were in. So I know there's 3 people in our class that had families and with several kids, and they would actually get to school 2 hours before lecture started, and that was their time to study because they knew when they got home, their kids they weren't. It wasn't a efficient studying environment because of their kids, so they did a lot of their studying in the morning. Another question: did you use Anki and Picmonic for every class? Any other study strategies? Um, I did use Anki for every class. I did not use Pygmonic for every class. So anatomy was the one that I didn't use Pygmonic for. Pygmonic does have anatomy uh, cartoons and stuff, but I personally, just based on our anatomy class and structure, I found it easier to um, talk through the PowerPoint slides with my classmates for that. But I while in lecture, I actually made my flashcards, my Anki flashcards, and then would review those in 1 or 2 days. So a lot of times I would just copy paste what was on the slide into the top part of the flashcard, and then do a fill in the blank kind of thing. Take out 1 or 2 words in the question part and put that in the answer, and that's how I made my flashcards. If the professor was going too fast for me to get all the information I felt like I needed, I would just write that slide number down, come back to it later, and finish my flashcards. But Pygmonic overall, for me, the biggest draw was pharmacology. I can't tell you how many times I was taking a pharm test and remembered a Pygmonic. So super helpful for pharmacology as you get into clinical medicine and disease states. It's also very helpful as well because it really highlights the buzzwords that you need to know. Maybe one other study strategy I would mention is if you're studying in small groups, you'll find your group of 2 or 3 or 5 that you really like. It does help to switch study groups every now and then, maybe 1 or 2 days before a test, because each study group is going to focus on something different. So many times I would go sit in on another study group, and they would have focus on something that I did not get with my study group. So mix it up every now and again. Again, you're going to find your core group, um, but uh, it does help to mix it up. All right, next question. While you were setting records, how much time were you dedicating to training, and how much time towards studying? So my training specifically for powerlifting, it's a lot of high intensity stuff for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and then resting for 2 or 3 minutes. And so when you're going for training for deadlift, for example, um, you're gonna it's funny if my training sessions were usually 2 to 3 hours. Okay, the amount of time that I was actually lifting was probably 30 minutes, maybe 45, just because that's the nature of maximal attempt training. And so I had my Anki flashcards on my phone. Picmonic has great apps for both Android and Apple. um, and I actually studied in between my sets, which was funny because after I graduated and was training, I texted one of my professors and I was like, I don't have any more flashcards to study. What do I do in between my squat sets? So Yeah, I'd say 2 to 3 hours training sessions at a time for 3 to 4 days a week. Again, I was specifically training to set world records, so that's going to be on the higher end. And then as far as time towards studying, I'd probably say at least a couple hours a day after class got out. And again, 1 to 2 hours of that was in the gym. Um, and again, I did use my lecture time to make flashcards, so um, that helps save time on getting me prepared to be able to study in the midst of training. But for some people, your exercise time is your time to zone out and to get away from school, and that's super important for you, for certain people. So if you need that, don't try to run on the treadmill and do flashcards. Just focus on you. You'll find your rhythm really after that first round of tests, and figure out how much time you need to give, or how much time you can spend focusing on other things. All right, good question. How often did you take breaks while studying to prevent excessive mental fatigue? This is going to be different for everybody. Okay, so I'm not going to give you my specific thing, because I tend to be one of those people that can focus for a lot longer without needing to take a break. But if you'll Google Pomodoro Timer, all right, Pomodoro, it looks like a tomato. But Pomodoro Timer is a another evidence-based tool, and what it does is it allows you to study and take breaks at regular intervals. So it's usually like a 15-minute block of studying, followed by a 5-minute break, and you repeat that for 4 times. After 4 of those blocks, you're going to take a longer 15-minute break. If at any point you finish a 15-minute block of studying, you feel like you don't need to take your 5-minute break, you hit the skip button and it rolls over into the next 15 minutes. But the timer concept really helps you to focus, and not check any social media, not check emails. You get 15 minutes of focus. And I feel like that's helped a lot of people in my class, and it did help me as well preparing for boards, to prevent excessive mental fatigue. Because again, there's that stress of, I got to cram all this stuff in, and then you're forgetting stuff and it feels bad. So look up Pomodoro Timer. It's a fantastic tool to use. And again, this is going to be different for everybody, and it's actually going to be different based on the day, based on how much sleep you got, based on how your nutrition was the last few weeks. You'll have how many tests you had, how relationships, personal things go on in your life. Stress has a huge factor on attention span. So it's not a catch-all, or one size fits all. But listen to your body, use that Pomodoro timer, and you can adjust the time as well if you feel like you're just getting easily distracted. Okay. Um, I think that is the end of the questions here. So if anybody has anything else, feel free to drop it in the chat. Let me see if we have our uh, raffle winner here. Oops, hang on. Pause. And a winner pulled up. All right, so our winner, and we have a few more questions, so I guess I'll touch on those real quick, is Elise Williams. Congratulations. You have won a free year of Picmonic Premium. So whatever email, Elise, you use to sign up, we'll send you a link and get you set up there. All right. Finally, got time for a few more questions. So how many times did most of the people in your cohort take the PANTS? 1. All right. So my particular program, the last 6 years, 100% pass rate on the first try. And unfortunately, this year we did have one person in my class out of 68 people who did not pass it on the first try. So COVID kind of hit in March, and we actually got pulled from our rotations at that point. I had to do everything online, so we didn't actually graduate or have our hooding or exit ceremony in person. Um, but yeah, one person out of my class. Overall, my program does a great job of preparing people for it. How long did you study for pants? You're really studying for pants the first day that you get into PA school. Um, Most programs do a good job of reiterating the information that's there. Um, you will take something called the pack rat. That's like a mock pants, and you'll take that before you start your clinical year, and then sometime during clinical year, you'll take it again. So that whole time, really, all during didactic year, you're getting your first pass through the material. As you get into rotations, again, you have end of rotation exams that you take after every clinical rotation. So you're studying for those. And again, all of these are based off the PANTS blueprint. So they have every body system under there. They have subtopics and disease states. Your program is probably going to base their objectives off of the PANTS blueprints. The end of rotation exams are based off of the PANTS blueprints. And so you're studying for those all along. What tools did I use specifically? Our program used a lot of Roche review. I know other people use Smarty Pants. I primarily did a ton of practice questions. I probably did 6,000 practice questions the 6 months leading up to taking the pants. So some people like to get pants prep pearls or a copy of current or certification recertification for the pants and panry. So these different review books, they like to do that. My program does a board review course a month before we take board. So if you don't have, if your program doesn't do that, which most programs I've talked to will either do one through their uh, program themselves and or add on another one that's done by a national organization. But you can always sign up for that, and they usually have like a guaranteed pass rate. So if you don't pass it, you get your money back, kind of thing. Um, so yeah, a bunch of practice questions. I personally authored again for Ross Review, so that was part of my studying, was just writing board questions for them. Tips for studying for pants. Pygmonic actually has a great resource here, and they've got kind of a 12-week guide, and you'll find a lot of these online as well. But it pretty much takes the pants blueprint and sections it off and tells you what you need to study the 12 weeks leading up into the pants, whatever your projected test date is. And the neat thing about it is a lot of these plans have something on there for like catch up days. So if you got behind a week or something, it had a day or two where you could catch up. What should I expect during didactic curriculum year and clinical year? Didactic, you could pretty much going to be doing a lot of PowerPoint slides and learning all the material textbook wise. And then during clinical year, you're going to see that in person and kind of begin to match clinical cases to topics that you've learned. So again, clinical practice a little bit different from boards. Boards are going to be clear cut. There's only one right answer. They're going to give you all the information you need to know. When you see a patient in clinic, it's a little bit different. You have to mine the information, get the information out of your patient. And ask the correct questions, and then diseases don't always follow the textbook. So a lot of that just comes with clinical experience. But the neat thing about clinical year is that it's a safe time to practice. You've got your preceptors behind you ready to teach you. Can you revisit what tools you used during school? So this is recorded. I think the best thing would just be to take a look at the recording when it's posted on YouTube. And that kind of brings us to our last slide. You'll also get a link in your email to the YouTube recording. Right. So finally, thanks everyone for attending. You're going to get a 30% off discount if you subscribe to Pygmonic in the next 24 hours. Again, if you're in PA school, I highly recommend this. If they only had pharmacology, I would still pay full price for it. It saves you so much time. Again, as you're getting ready for boards, great resource to touch up on the topics that you're less familiar with and go over the high points. Again, um, they base the Pygmonics off the pants blueprint. There's actually a pathway that we've built and are kind of revamping right now that follows the pants blueprint. And so, just an incredible resource. And again, the audio visual platform is such a powerful tool to use. So if you choose not to get Picmonic, keep in mind that you do get access to one free Picmonic every day forever. So if you just need to, every now and then have one concept that you have a hard time remembering, you can always come back to Picmonic and get that free 1 day thing. All right. So thanks guys so much for coming. I appreciate you. And again, my email is joe@picmonic.com. Feel free to reach out for me. And if we need to schedule a call, I would be happy to talk with you a little bit more. Or if you're just stressed out and need someone to chat with and vent to, I'd be happy to kind of ground you and kind of field some more questions. All right. So you guys have a good night. Thanks so much.